Hi everyone, this is Rooster Woodworking, and this week we are making a simple plant stand with tight-fitting half flaps and talking about whether or not you should charge your friends for your work. Stay tuned. A few months ago, I made this plant stand for one of my friends, and she liked it so much that she asked if I could make the same design but much bigger. And of course I accepted, but after I said yes, she asked me the much dreaded question of, well, how much do I owe you for this? And if I'm being honest, this is something that I'm struggling with when it comes to charging my friends for my work. So today we're going to talk about whether or not you should charge your friends and family and what you might need to take into account when making that decision. Now, what I've done so far on this project is pick up a piece of maple that I had left over from a project that was actually pretty wonky, and I couldn't really use that piece for anything else but a cutting board or something like a plant stand. And I think that's the first obvious thing to take into account when charging someone or not, is the cost of the materials that you're going to use. In this case though, the piece of maple that I'm using was actually already paid for by another customer since it was left over from a project. So would it be fair to charge my friend for it? After planing my pieces down, I moved on to cutting a straight edge on each of the boards. Because I don't have a joiner, I usually use my table saw with a straight edge as an extension fence. All I have to do is raise the blade to the proper height and run the concave part of the board against the fence. Having that longer fence ensures that my piece is going to stay straight the whole time. Once I have one straight edge, it is rinse and repeat on the other side of the board. Let's also take a second to appreciate the Oregon sun, which I can enjoy about 3 days every winter. But I digress. Once my boards were all squared up, it was time to cut everything to rough size. Here, I'm using my bend saw to make those cuts because I find that it leaves less burn marks on things like maple. And I know, if I clean my table saw blade more often, it wouldn't leave such burn marks, but that's a whole nother conversation. A quick pass through the planer, and all my pieces were nice and shiny, ready to be cut to length. But let's get back to our conversation. You see, all the steps that you see me do here, well, they take time, and the second most obvious thing that you can charge for is your time in the shop. If you're someone like me that is kind of an amateur woodworker and sometimes get commission from clients, then it can be pretty tough to charge your friends and family for your time. In my case, it can be even more challenging because I take extra time to film everything I do in the shop. For example, this process of cutting everything to length would probably have taken half the time if I were not filming. So if, like most of us, you have limited amount of times in the shop and you end up taking on a lot of projects for other people, I think it would be fair to ask for some money back for that time. One thing that I have found very helpful lately is instead of telling my friends how much something cost, I would just tell them how long it took me to make it. And most of the time, people will tend to pay you close to what they make in an hour, which is usually fair. Now, to get back to the project, to do the joinery on this, I am using my Festool domino. And while a domino is a very expensive tool that not everyone has in their shop, that is the perfect illustration for my last point of things that you could charge your friends for. And that is consumables. See, anything that you use in your projects, including wood glue, screws, or finish, has a cost. But there is also a hidden cost to running even a hobbyist woodshop. See, any tools that you use cutters, blades, or knives will need replacement at some point. By making projects for people, you wear down those tools, and this is a cost that can add up significantly over the years. There's also those cases where you might need a tool or jig for a project that you don't already have. See, for example, when I made this prototype for my planter, the half-lap was, well, less than desirable. So I decided to buy this wonderful tool, which is a curve maker. This simply accounts for the curve of your blade, and you can set it to whatever width you need, and it will create close to perfect dados. Now, in this case, I don't really need this tool, and I will also use it for many more projects, so I wouldn't charge my friend for it. But if you had to buy something specific, that would be worth considering. After setting my blade height to exactly half of my stock, I ran a test piece through to make sure that my dado was going to be nice and snug. All I had to do is use the curve maker to set the end and start points, and then get rid of the waste in between. And I ended up with exactly the fit I want in those situations, not too tight and not too loose to allow some glue and expansion. Then it was rinse and repeat on all the parts I needed. I also took the extra time to clean up the joint with a chisel. Then it was time for glue up. All I had to do was add some glue and dominoes and clamp both halves together. The only thing you want to watch out for here is that your half lap will be facing one another and not the same direction, otherwise it won't work. Once I had my two halves, it was a matter of making sure that they fit together and then adding a slight round over to each of the parts. This half lap design works really well because if you wanted to sell those, you could actually flat pack it, and that would make it much easier to ship. So, should you charge your friends and family for your work? Well, I think the answer to this is if you have people around you that value your time and expertise, they will most likely be very happy to pay you and support you in what you do. And that could be a great way to filter out who you should and should not do work for. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.